The public meeting of the Monroe Township Board of Education will now come to order. Will one of our student reps please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Mr. Tharney. Mr. Gorski, roll call, please.
Ms. Arminio.
Here.
Mr. Braverman.
Here.
Ms. DeMayo.
Here.
Mr. Kaufman.
Here.
Mrs. Kolpanowicz.
Here.
Mr. Nostine.
Here.
Mr. Poi.
Here.
Mr. Prezioso.
Here.
Mr. Ryback.
Here.
Mr. Zarneski.
Here.
Mr. Board President, you have a quorum present this evening. In accordance with the provisions of the New Jersey Open Public Meetings Law, the Monroe Township Board of Education has caused notice of this meeting to be published by having the date, time, and place thereof posted November 13th, 2015 at all schools, the Home News Tribune, the Cranberry Press, and filed with the clerk of the municipality.
Thank you, Mr. Gorski. At this time, we'll have the report from our student board members.
Okay, so the first thing is the high school's music department is holding its annual coffee house tomorrow in the high school, where students can sing and play instruments as part of a fundraising event. Earlier today, the Fellowship of Christian Athletes and Italian Honor Society held a volleyball tournament, and I heard it went well. And for some of our sports teams, the boys soccer team advanced all the way to the sectional finals against Freehold. They lost the game with a score of 3-2, but they had over 650 fans show up, which was a new record for a Monroe home game. The girls field hockey team made it all the way to the sectional semifinals, and the girls volleyball team is set to play in the sectional quarterfinals. The girls tennis team won the division title, and they've moved up from white division to red division. And our boys cross country team went undefeated this season. And with all that being said, we'd like to congratulate all of our sports teams, players, coaches, and trainers.
All right, thank you. Yeah, now for my part. The Model UN Club and the Youth and Government organizations are hosting their second annual Day of Service for the year, involved with students across multiple districts in order to promote civic engagement and volunteerism. Prior to their conferences that will be held later next year. DECA held its annual car show at the high school and was involved in the Township's Oktoberfest to raise funds for Operation Shoebox, an organization that is dedicated to delivering care packages to active duty military personnel who are currently serving across the globe, proudly representing our great nation. The MTHS chapter of DECA was recognized once again by the township, with the mayor declaring November DECA month in honor of their involvement in the community. And the event is also hosting a hypnotist show tonight to help raise funds for the chapter, specifically to support students in competing in business, financial, and marketing-related categories against students from other schools as part of this internationally recognized organization. So if the meeting ends early and anybody wants to go get hypnotized, that's going to be in the Performing Arts Center tonight. The high school's chapter, the Future Business Leaders of America, recently held its second annual Haunted High School event, which was a charity event targeted toward younger children in the district. And this was a community and service endeavor led by FBLA, and it was a collaborative. It was orchestrated in conjunction with several other high school clubs and organizations to serve as a fundraiser for the Mama Mayor Breast Cancer Foundation in honor of October being Breast Cancer Awareness Month. With many student volunteers and teachers, including Ms. Dale, who did a wonderful job coordinating the event as the advisor. And of course, the community, FBLA was able to successfully raise $2,400 for a worthwhile cause while students continue to prepare to compete against students from other schools in business-related competitive events. And the club also organized a presentation from a national representative from the March of Dimes organization, with whom the club will be working with in future charity events. Mr. Board President, that concludes our report.
Thank you. And before we move on, I would like to commend all of our fall athletes and their coaches. I know they put a lot of time in And I know their parents also put a lot of time in transporting them back and forth to practice and then coming and attending their games. And we appreciate the effort that they put into this in representing Monroe Township High School. We're now going to move to the first public forum, and I would just like to share with you, remind you of the rules that we have for that. The first forum is designed for members of the public to speak about items which are on the agenda. I would ask that you please identify the item number listed on the agenda so that board members can quickly find it and know exactly what you're speaking of. The second public forum will be open to questions of any nature or concern. That comes later in the evening. When coming up to the microphone, please state your name, your address, and if you have any group affiliation, please indicate that. And your statement should be no more than 3 minutes. And all statements should be directed to the president of the board. And I thank you at this time. Do we have anyone who wants to speak to the agenda? Looks like we have an innocuous agenda tonight, so we will then move on to the approval of minutes. I move that we accept the minutes of the Special Board of Education meeting held on August the 19th.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Recuse? Minutes are adopted. I move that we accept the minutes of the Public Board of Education meeting of August the 26th.
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Recuse? The minutes are accepted. I move that we accept the minutes of the closed session meeting of August the 26th.
So moved. Second. You have to recuse on this one.
All in favor?
Aye. I did it.
Opposed? Recuse? Braverman. The minutes are accepted of that meeting. I now move that we accept the minutes of the Public Board of Education meeting of September 16th.
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Recuse? The minutes are accepted. And I now move that we accept the minutes of the closed session meeting of September the 16th, 2015.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? And recuse? Those minutes are accepted as well. We will now go to the committee reports. Does any chair of the committee have a report to give us? Mr. Ryback?
Thank you. The Personnel Committee met yesterday. There was a number of items. One of them we dealt with was the Superintendent's Professional Development Plan. Dr. Kozak shared his plan with us, and it was quite comprehensive in scope. And for the sake of time, I'm just going to give one example of the goals and activities listed. There were professional learning goals, that's core content state standards. He will enhance his knowledge and skills to support and evaluate district-wide implementation and align curriculum. Professional learning activities, where he will turnkey the content of South Jersey Study Council workshops with the leadership team to support a continuous improvement model of learning. School leader training needs. For example, he will attend school law update professional training workshops, and he also included his professional plan progress summary. The goals and activities all reflected New Jersey standards for school leaders. We also had a discussion on the workstation specialist, technology salaries. We compared our salaries scale with 3 other districts near us, and we were the lowest on the scale. We've already lost some employees to other districts after having invested training time with them. We're not attracting the most qualified candidates as well, unfortunately. There'll be more information pertaining to any recommended changes at the December board meeting. Just for your knowledge, the media specialist for the middle school interviews will be conducted as soon as a good pool of candidates is achieved. Haven't achieved that as yet, I believe. Park portfolio assessment writers. We have a number of students, unfortunately, who have not passed any of the standardized tests for diploma. According to the state, another option for them is to complete a portfolio. However, we need to hire teachers per session at the non-instructional rate, totaling about 10 hours, to develop these portfolios. That finalizes my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ryback.
No, go ahead.
Mr. Kaufman?
Sure you don't want to go? I don't mind. Okay, so we had a curriculum meeting this evening. We went over a couple of items. We were presented with a overview of Project Unity, which will be something that the high school will be looking into for next year, correct? Or this year? It's going to be an interesting program for our children with special needs, co-sponsored by the Special Olympics Committee. Certain areas like bowling, track and field, and other types of events will be created and managed for our students. The cost of about $4,500 is going to be picked up by Special Olympics, and they'll pick up things like equipment and transportation and uniforms, potentially even in the future, whatever types of things we might need. This will be the first year that we're doing this, and hopefully it'll be a great program. It sounded like it's going to be amazing. We also discussed student data transfer and information privacy issues. And we've asked the administration to definitely button up their processes on making sure that we have the correct controls in place when talking to vendors about using software packages, engaging in different types of data transfer relationships to ensure the protection of our students' privacy, and to make sure that not only are we protecting the privacy of our students, but we're also protecting against things like data breaches and other types of issues that can come out related to, engagement of third parties and services and moving student data outside to protection of our network. So more to come on that. We also had a presentation on a STEP program, which is basically a teaching tool for our parents. This was the first overview of this program, which is targeting parents of special needs children, or I think we discussed it's going to be open to all parents from grades 1 through 5, and it's going to cover different topic areas like how to understand your child's behavior, how to listen and talk to your child, disciplines that make sense, and a few other things. So as that program begins to develop and is sent out, we'll probably provide future updates on that as well. We also reviewed 2 curriculum documents for health and physical education for grade 12 and the district comprehensive school counseling programs, grade K through 12, and we'll have another exciting curriculum meeting next month to talk about the ones that we didn't get to because we had so many other interesting topics to get to this night. That's it. That's all I got.
Thank you, Mr. Kaufman. Ms. Arminio?
Yes, last night we had a policy meeting. We were given several policies that were mandated, and I will just speak to them from their titles. They are again on the website. We had evaluation of superintendent, that was mandatory and revised. Evaluation of teachers, also mandatory and a revised policy. Evaluation of teaching staff members, excluding teachers and administrators, also mandatory and revised. Evaluation of administrators, excluding principals, vice principals, assistant principals, mandatory and revised. Evaluation of principals, vice principals, and assistant principals. Most of the language on these policies are very similar. However, there are some differences based on the employee and the designation. There was also a mandatory family leave revised. There are 2, service animals. That's a new policy. That is policy 5337 and policy 5516. Use of electronic communication and recording devices, and that's for students. That's a revised policy. I would recommend that students and parents actually take a look at that. That's policy 5516, and that will be at the second reading at our December meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Arminio. Mrs. Koloponovich?
Yes, Finance Committee meeting we had on October 22nd, where the committee reviewed the shared services agreement with the township on the tennis courts, which is on tonight's agenda. The committee unanimously agreed to support the agreement and send it up to the township for their perusal and possible vote. Back in September, I believe, of this year, I talked about adding a portal onto the financial section of the website for members of the community to ask any finance questions that they might have. This was done so that any questions asked would get the accurate information in writing from the school district instead of relying on rumors or misinformation. And I'm happy to report that that portal is up and running and welcomes any questions that anybody in the community might have. And that concludes my report.
Thank you. Any other reports?
I don't have a report, but I have a question. Is this a good time to ask?
If it's about a committee report?
It sure is. I believe it was Mr. Ryback's report. You mentioned about these folio writers, and I see it on the agenda tonight. Could someone please elaborate a little on this? Because I believe that Mr. Ryback said that it's for students that didn't pass the park and therefore can't graduate, and I didn't realize that park was a requirement to graduate.
Sure, go ahead.
Okay. All right, I'll speak to that, and Dr. Avlich, I think we can both speak to that. Park is not, it is one of the graduation requirements. The Department of Education for the state of New Jersey offered several alternatives. This is the first year, or last year was the first year the park was administered, and the students did not have the opportunity, as they did before with the HESPA test, which was the state test, to take it multiple times. Students have an opportunity to take the AccuPlacer, PSAT, SAT, PARC, what was the other one? ASVAB, all these acronyms, to demonstrate their proficiency. Students who are seniors now, who have not demonstrated their proficiency in any of those assessments, have the option to complete a portfolio. And the portfolio is a pretty rigorous process. It's not new. This has been around. It's just changed names, really, to portfolio. But it allows students to demonstrate their knowledge of the different subject areas, specifically math and language arts and science, and throughout the year collect evidence. Our teachers would then not only be there to create the portfolio, but also to assess it, the initial assessment, and they would have to send that to the state, to the Department of Education for final approval. So it's a rigorous process. We have, I believe, around 50 students this year. I think that's pretty much in line with what a lot of districts have, percentage-wise. And the students who are in 8th grade and 9th grade, I think will have a better opportunity, having had more exposure to the Common Core aligned curriculum, to demonstrate their proficiency by the time they become juniors. The state certainly has raised the bar with Park as far as what's expected of students, and I think that explains part of the reasons, or part of the reason for some of these students who did not pass Park on the initial run. Dr. Abbott, you want to add to that?
Just for your information, on the district website, we have a Park section that we've put together. About, I'm going to say the end of October, we received an updated menu of assessments from the State Department, and we have updated that information. So we've known about this menu. The menu has been communicated out to parents. It's been on our website for the past year, but they just gave us the cutoff scores for the Park assessments. So now, as we're starting to receive scores in the near future for all of our students, we will be looking at that too. So we may have students that did pass the Park that would be taken off of that list that Dr. Kozak mentioned. We also, just today, we administered the ASVAB to a group of students at the high school who opted to take it. That's one of the other assessments. And we are in the process of coordinating the test called the AccuPlacer. The AccuPlacer is usually used by the county colleges for admission to see if students need to take remedial classes or not when they get to that school. That is also on the menu of options of assessments. And we did get certified by College Board to be able to provide that for our students here. So we are in the process of planning for that test also. So the portfolio is kind of the final piece. We're trying to get students to pass one of the assessments prior to having to do the portfolio assessment because it is very involved.
I guess so the portfolio is kind of like a last resort at that
Yes.
point. I got
Yes,
you.
and it was before, it was just called a different name.
Okay, because I never heard that, okay.
Yeah, so it was an option prior to Park.
What was it called before?
ASSA? Yeah, I'm looking back at my supervisors to make
Okay.
sure I'm correct, but yeah,
Okay.
ASSA, they're
Okay.
shaking their heads, yes. ASSA was the
Alternate
older.
school assessment or something. I think
Yes.
that's what the acronym stood for.
What the state released in October for the portfolio assessments is kind of guidelines to the district of how to prepare them, but it is up to the individual districts to prepare the portfolio assessments.
Okay, thank you.
Just to add to it, Tom, thanks for bringing that up, because I noticed, I think the problem, the confusion was actually in the wording on the agenda, because it says Park Portfolio Assessment, but it's really for kids who have failed to pass any of the assessments that we
Correct.
give. That's why they need to create that portfolio, because that's their last-ditch effort, really, to get a diploma.
It's actually not Park at all.
The Department of Ed and Commissioner Hespy have certainly spoken to this to say, we want to provide students as many opportunities. We realize that we've raised the bar. So we want to provide students as many opportunities as we can, knowing that some students are not good test takers. So, here are plenty of different ways that students can demonstrate their knowledge.
One question for Dr. Alvich. How late in the year could a student take, for example, the SAT or the ACT, and not have to then go through the portfolio assessment? Is there a cutoff for that?
There is a cutoff. I think it's January is the cutoff. I think the January assessment window, because we have to be able to get those scores back, and it takes time to get the scores back in order for us to assess that, to plan for graduation. So I think January is the final cutoff for the SAT scores. Now, AccuPlacer we can continue to do because we can get those scores back pretty quickly.
So there's still opportunities for those
Yes.
students to demonstrate proficiency?
Yes, and we are trying to utilize every opportunity that we can for our students.
Thank you. All right, we will move on to the superintendent's report.
Hey, thank you, Mr. President. First, I'd like to try to highlight some of the student activities, and our student representatives did such a wonderful job tonight, as always, really bringing out a lot of the activities that our students are involved in, both in athletics, in music, in other activities. So thank you again for a very comprehensive report. With that, there were a couple things that I just wanted to add. We have 4 of our high school students, 3 of whom were in a picture that we just posted because we knew of 3 who participate in our school athletics, and then we received information on a 4th student who actually participates in a sport that the high school doesn't offer, and that is rowing, crew. So I would just like to give recognition to those 4 students. They're also at least 3 of them are on our Facebook and page, Twitter, and our website. But we have Gloriana Parati, who was an all-conference pitcher for the Monroe softball team last season. She signed a letter of intent to row for the University of Miami in Coral Gables, Florida next year for crew. So although she played softball for us, she's signing for crew, which we do not offer. Grace Martini is the captain of the girls' field hockey team, won county championships in field hockey and softball, played in a county and sectional final in basketball, earned all-conference selection in field hockey and all-division selection in softball. She'll be signing a letter of intent to play field hockey at East Stroudsburg University. Rico Viani, and I apologize if I'm not pronouncing the last names correctly. Varsity letter winner in 2 sports, basketball and baseball. Won a county championship in baseball, played in a county and sectional final, earned all-division selection in baseball. He'll be signing a letter of intent to play baseball at Wagner College. And Robbie Pito, who is a varsity letter in baseball, won a county championship in baseball, played in a county and sectional final, earned all-conference selection in baseball, and rated as one of the top 10 senior high school pitchers in the country by, it just says USA, I forget I think it's US News. I'll be signing a letter of intent to play baseball at the University of North Carolina. And again, as our student representative has so eloquently mentioned, our boys soccer team, NJ.com, made a mention of not only was it a wonderful game, a hard-fought game, the kids really played well, even though they ended up shy of a goal. It was 3-2 in the final score. NJ.com gave accolades to the entire sports program, and especially the students and the fans who were in attendance last Friday, and I got to witness that, and a lot of school spirit. So that was really, really nice to see, and nice to receive that recognition. And there's a lot of other great news in your principal report, the superintendent report, that section of that. Please take time to go through that. There's a lot of good activities going on in our schools. One note on our board agenda, under board action, item letter I. If you would, this was brought up to me by the board president, thanking him for that. It was a mistake that the stipend amount to be paid to the advisor per policy 2430 dictates that the first year of a new activity is voluntary and unpaid. So I would ask that you strike the stipend amount for the advisor. That is letter I under board action of the agenda. Page 15. Thank you. Thank you. And that concludes my report, Mr. President.
All right. And now if you want to give your recommendations under personnel.
Absolutely. I ask the board to, I recommend to the board to consider approving personnel items A through Z.
So moved.
Okay, we have a second? All right.
Who made the first?
Okay. Any questions or discussion on personnel items A through Z? All right, seeing none. Mr. Gorski, roll call, please.
Ms. Arminio.
Yes.
Mr. Braverman.
Yes.
Mr. Zarneski.
Yes.
Ms. DeMayo.
Yes.
Mr. Kaufman.
Yes.
Mrs. Kolponowicz.
Yes.
Mr. Nustine.
Yes.
Mr. Prezioso. Mr. Ryback.
Yes.
Mr. Poi.
Yes.
Mr. Board President, personnel items A through Z passes.
Thank you. And now your board action items.
Yes. I ask that the board, recommend to the board that they approve items A through O. Again, noted that item I, that stipend amount has been deleted.
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Do we have any questions or comments? Ms. Arminio?
Yes, on board action G and H for funded grants, we're applying for them. Are they, if we get them, will they be for a specific purpose? And do we require matching funds?
Yes, will be for a specific purpose, and I believe we just got information this afternoon. No, we didn't have that?
No.
Okay, all right.
We did get information last week that we did receive the first grant. So the grant in letter G, the NJEA-funded grant in the amount of $2,000, we were awarded that grant.
And I apologize for just shooting this at you now, but do we know what that will be used for? I mean, it's sustainable, so it's environmental, I would imagine?
It's environmental. It's to begin working at the high school with a garden, using it within our foods classes. There is actually a green team that will be involved in coordinating all of that.
That's a student team?
It's students, it's parents, it's administrators, it's teachers, yes. And this is under the supervision of Mrs. Castelletto, our supervisor of science.
And do we have to fund that as well, or is that just a straight grant?
Nope, it's just the grant that we did not have to provide matching funds.
And information on H?
It's the second part of that grant. They recommend that we apply for both grants, the smaller portion and the larger portion, to fund the whole activity. So it's really a combined grant, but we have been awarded the first one. We haven't heard yet about the second.
It's likely, however, that if you get award,
Don't know.
we don't know. Okay, great. And I think I have another question. On I, so the first bulletin, we're scratching to $2,054 as an annual stipend,
Yes.
but we are keeping the materials and the transportation to the State Science Olympiad program, correct? So
Yes.
it's 500, the 400. Now, is that sort of our attempt at getting into the robotics? Is that am I allowed to say that?
No, sure.
Is it a
This was the
secret?
presentation that Mrs. Castelletto did with the students at the last board meeting.
Right,
So
okay.
that's what, this would be approving that program, the start of that program, and her 3-year plan for implementation. So this would be the first year.
Will that lead into robotics?
The two are not related, although there are some robotic portions to the Science Olympiad. We do have a high school robotics team, and we are hosting the competition this year. That middle school robotics team,
It's in the planning phases.
Okay. Sorry.
I'm ready to start it.
It's in the planning phases.
But we have to follow procedures and policy, just like everyone else has to. And I won't go on about how valuable middle school robotics will be. But
Thank you.
thanks, Ms. Armenia.
Any other questions? Just an aside, based on Ms. Arminio's questions about those grants, it reminded me that when we approved Metz as our food caterer, one of their commitments was that they would be building a greenhouse here at the high school, and I have not heard any update about that.
Nancy Mitrosak is actually a part of this green team, and they will be working together to do that. That will be part of it.
And Metz will be building the greenhouse?
Mats will be working with us on that also, yes.
Okay, thank you. No further questions or discussion? All right, then, Mr. Gorski, roll call, please.
Ms. Arminio.
Yes.
Mr. Braverman.
Yes.
Mr. Zarneski.
I abstain with the exception of items J and N where I vote yes.
Thank you, sir. Ms. DeMayo.
Yes.
Mr. Kaufman.
Yes.
Mrs. Kolpanowicz.
Yes.
Mr. Nostine.
Yes.
Mr. Prezioso.
Yes.
Mr. Ryback.
Yes.
Mr. Foy.
Yes.
Mr. Board President, Board action items A through O, with the modification on I to remove the stipend piece passes.
Thank you, and would you now give us your report and recommendations?
Mr. Board President and members of the Monroe Township Board of Education, it is recommended that board action items A through I be approved by consent roll call.
So moved.
Second.
Oh, I'm sorry. Mr. Mayo has me distracted over there with her sneezing.
It's part of the record, right? Bless you.
Okay, do we have,
I believe you were going to ask if there are any questions on the business administrator report.
do you have a first and a second?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so do we have any questions on any of Mr. Gorski's recommendations? No questions? Okay, roll call, please.
Ms. Arminio.
Yes, with the exception of G, the shared service agreement between Monroe Board of Education and the Township of Monroe Tennis Courts. I vote no on that, not because I don't believe it's essential that we have the residents using the tennis courts. I find that the use of the tennis courts for the benefit of all the members and residents of Monroe is reasonable enough for the township to share the cost of repairs. I disagree, however, with the condition of it regarding the Art Commission, so I vote no on that basis.
Thank you. Mr. Braverman.
Yes on everything except G. G is a no.
Thank you. Mr. Zarneski.
I abstain with the exception of items B and G where I vote yes.
Thank you. Ms. DeMayo.
Yes.
Mr. Kaufman.
Yes.
Mrs. Koloponowicz.
Yes.
Mr. Nostine.
Yes.
Mr. Prezioso. Mr. Ryback.
Yes.
Mr. Poi.
Yes.
Mr. Board President, board action items A through I passes. And that concludes my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gorski. Just a few comments as part of my president's report. I wanted to, with the school board elections now a thing of the past, I wanted to congratulate Frank Russo and Dawn Corino, who, I'm not sure, if you're here tonight, please stand up. Okay, well, I extend to you my congratulations nevertheless, and also to Mr. Braverman on your reelection. I would like to mention that Mr. Gorski, Dr. Kozak, and myself met with our town officials last week. It was a productive hour to an hour and a half meeting. We talked about various topics. One was the shared service agreement, but more primarily going forward, whether or not they would be willing to meet with us and our state representatives from the Assembly and the Senate to see what assistance they might be able to give the township in terms of somehow ameliorating our financial situation. Also, we talked about several other issues. The possibility of putting, they mentioned that there's a possibility of putting up a, what do you call those, a cell tower. One of them somewhat near the school, and I think they are inclined not to favor that. And I forget if there was anything else that you might want to add to that, either of you, that discussion that we had with them. I know I've caught you off guard here. Because you
No, it was like you said, it was a very productive meeting. We also talked about potential of different land sites, which will be recommended in the future to the ad hoc committee for consideration. The sites would be contributions of land from the township to the school district, similar to what happened with Oak Tree School, where we received the donation of land to construct a school on, saving $2 million, which otherwise would have had to have been bonded for. And these parcels of land look very attractive at this juncture, but there are no predetermined notions going into the ad hoc committee, and we are starting there from scratch, and the committee will decide whether that's feasible with their recommendation.
And finally, I would like to report on the first meeting of our ad hoc committee. We met, I guess it was Monday night of this week. We're having a lot of meetings lately, but we met on Monday night. Everyone that we invited to be part of that committee was there, with the exception of one person, and he had previously notified us of his inability to be there. I wanted to update the board as well as the community and remind you of what the makeup of that committee is. We have a total of 9 parents from the various schools in the district. We have 4 members of the central administration. We have 3 building principals. We have 4 teachers at various grade levels. There are 4 members of the Board of Education. 4 senior communities were represented. We had 2 students from the high school. We also had a member of the police department who is also a parent, and a member of the rec department. And I thought it was a very good first session. It ran for about an hour and a half. A lot of give and take, a lot of input. Our next meeting will be on December 7th. I will also state for your information the charge of that ad hoc committee. And I'm going to read exactly what I gave to them on Monday evening. The charge of the ad hoc committee is to understand and evaluate the impact of current and anticipated growth in student enrollments on the facilities and programs of the Monroe schools, and to formulate recommendations for consideration by our Board of Education on addressing those impacts. They will be working with a Student Growth Advisory Committee, which will be much larger. The ad hoc committee is about 33 members altogether. We want the Student Growth Committee to be anywhere up to about 100 people. We already have quite a few people on the list who have expressed interest, and we are looking for that Student Growth Advisory Committee, which will meet for the first time in January. We are looking for it to reflect the community. And by that, I mean we want more parents, okay, from throughout the community on that committee. We want more teachers on that committee. We welcome other members of the board to participate in that committee. We want more representatives from our senior communities, and if you happen to be a senior and you don't live in one of those communities, you are also welcome to join that committee. We want more students, both high school, middle school, and possibly elementary. We are looking to make this all-encompassing so that we get a diversity of thinking in terms of what we can do to address the impact of student growth. This is a wonderful opportunity, in my opinion, for the community to involve themselves in assisting the board in determining what direction the schools should move in the future. If you happen to see this meeting on Channel 28, or if you're sitting here tonight, I would strongly encourage you that if you are not on the ad hoc committee, and if you have not yet applied for membership on the Student Growth Advisory Committee, that you please consider doing so. And the sooner you let us know, the better, because we will be attempting to finalize the list of people that will be on the advisory committee. Now, I also encourage you to tell friends, neighbors, relatives that live in the community that you think might be interested. There will be at least one nightly meeting per month. That's the commitment, and the meetings will run for about an hour and a half. Probably the easiest way for me to tell you to communicate that interest would be to call the superintendent's office or email the superintendent's office, giving your name, your address, your phone number, and why you would like to be on the advisory committee. But we really want the community to be involved in this. It's a very, very important step in moving forward, not only for our schools, but also for our community, because as you know, it is our community that has to finance our schools for the most part. And that concludes my report this evening. Let me get back to the agenda here, because I always tend to screw up here. Okay, so let me now ask, are there any other business that any of our members would like to bring up? Mr. Ryback.
Mr. President, your report just now gave me a wonderful segue into expressing a few things that have been on my mind for some while now. Let me start by saying certain things are very difficult to achieve. I hate quitting, and it's just my makeup, and I'm sure most of us here feel the same way. A number of years ago, our district lobbied very hard for legislation to remove the cap on the growth aid formula. As a matter of fact, we're losing, Mr. Gorski, you could probably tell me, correct me if I'm wrong, somewhere around $6 million a year. It went before the Senate committee and it passed, but it never passed the Senate itself. However, it is still active on the floor of the Assembly, and nothing's been done about it. We don't hear about it. I think we need to do something to rekindle that flame. As difficult as it may be, I just can't see walking away from it because the job really isn't done yet. And I think, well, there's a few things. Let me just say a couple other things, and then I'll give you my idea if this is a matter of discussion. We're looking at taxes. That certainly affects our taxes. But I look at areas like Jersey City and Hackensack, and I see their per capita income growing and growing and growing, yet the amount of state aid they get is based on a number of years ago a lot more than ours. Why isn't that being changed? What are our legislators doing for that? We have something called impact fees. Now, that's illegal. Why is it illegal? This is my opinion. Because of the builders' lobby. They don't want to pay for new schools because of the impact of new growth, which we're certainly experiencing. I was told by our legislators that they would not be opposed to bringing that up again before the legislature. Hasn't been done yet. I think you started doing the right thing by meeting with our town representatives. I'd like to ask you to ask the administration if we can continue speaking not just with the town representatives, but our state representatives as well, for all these issues, to discuss these issues, to see what we can do to help our taxpayers and to help us maintain first-rate education for all our students. I don't think this is a matter of emotion, because I think this has already been discussed a number of years ago, and I think, knowing that the district already participated in something like this, I would ask you, Mr. President, if you would speak with the administration and see if we can't get something like this going and have a meeting, and certainly it's up to you, but at that meeting, if you want to include a number of board members, off the top of my head, I'd say maybe 1 to 4, but that's certainly something that you have to decide on. Thank you.
Anyone else? Mr. Braverman?
When Mr. Gorski asked the town to contribute towards the refurbishing of the tennis courts, and they agreed, but with a caveat, I said, gee, they never do anything really just out of the goodness of their heart. So I said to myself, I'll start following the money. So I did. I looked up NJSA 54-4-75, and that's how the township is supposed to be giving us the revenue to run the schools. And it says, the township must make an initial payment to the board of 20% of the school taxes on or before, must make an initial payment on or before August 10th each school year without a request by the board. Voluntary. They're supposed to just do this. It's on their calendar. Thereafter, the township must pay school taxes within 30 days after a request by the board in the requested amount, provided such amount does not exceed the board's required expenditures for a period of 8 weeks following the request. Now, I understand that we passed at the reorganization meeting a schedule for the township to pay us the money every month. I understand that. However, it's against the law. We all take an oath when we when we swear on the Bible or whatever, when we are elected to this office, that we will be law-abiding. So I'm suggesting that Mr. Gorski and Central Office Administration take a month to get on schedule. Now, you might be saying, we're already collecting on a monthly basis. Why upset the apple cart? That's already been fought in court by the Board of Education versus Fairlawn in 1976. And the court said, the municipal budget upon which the annual real property taxes rate is based has 3 distinct components: the amount to be raised for municipal purposes, the amount to be raised for county purposes, and the amount to be raised for school purposes. As to the county and school monies to be thus raised, it is an essential part of the overall scheme that the obligation of the municipality to include these sums in their budgets, to collect them, and to transmit them in accordance with the statutory directive is absolute and unqualified. These funds, moreover, once collected, are in practical effect in a trust, their trust funds, until transmitted to the school district. The municipality is merely a collection agency. So what I'm suggesting, and if I need a motion on this, just to follow the law and for this board to be law-abiding, I'll make a motion. But it seems to me that Mr. Gorski, with his knowledge, I mean, this guy knows numbers, he should be, or the board, with the president's signature, should be notifying the township by certified mail, probably by January, that we're getting on track and this is what we want to do. As far as the law is concerned, the township doesn't have a choice.
Mr. White?
Yes.
To Mr. Braverman's comments, with all respect, sir. First, the process begins with the passing of the school district budget by the Board of Education. A big component of that budget is the tax revenue, which is raised by the municipality and then paid to the school district. That calculation for taxes to be raised on the general fund and the debt service fund is reported on Form A4F on a split year basis because we have to reconcile with the township and they're on a calendar year basis. I then, as the business administrator, prepare a tax payment schedule for 10 monthly payments from the township, and that payment schedule is front-loaded in accordance with the statute to accommodate the heavy debt service load that our district has in September and other months. It's an intelligently designed schedule which is in full compliance with law and district policy. And I asked respectfully that Mr. Braverman follow up on this misunderstanding by a meeting with Mary Smith, the board attorney, and I, so that we could review this a little more in detail.
Well, with all due respect to you, Mr. Gorski, I got this from Mary Smith.
But, sir, I think you're misinterpreting it, with all respect.
Oh.
Because every year our school board is audited.
Let me
Tell you, I'm in full compliance with the law, and I have to correct that when the statement's made that we are not. Respectfully, sir, we are in full compliance with law and board policy on the tax payment schedule.
Not if we're not doing it on a state form every 8 weeks.
It's on a state form, and we are collecting more than an amortized straight line amount because of the heavy debt service we have early in the year. The schedule is actually to our advantage, and I'll be happy to discuss that with you in private.
I think it should be discussed publicly. That's why I brought it up.
Then my only last comment is, again, we are in full compliance with the law and board policy with the tax payment schedule.
The comment that I have, Mr. Braverman, is I listened very carefully to what you were saying and reading, and I'm not quite certain, and I'm being very honest and truthful with you on this, I'm really not certain exactly what the issue is that as you see it in your mind. Are we being shortchanged? Are we not getting the payments that we should get? I mean, I just failed to
yes.
realize what it was that you were driving at.
I think we are being shortchanged. I think if we get 20% of the revenue right up front, we have quite a bit of money for investment. And then we pay our bills every if we're structured to pay our bills every 8 weeks, we still have that cushion. This is the money that they're floating and they're getting the interest on. We're running a school district and we should be in control of that money.
Just one final comment on that. In the months of July and August, we get front-loaded payments, which again, I'd rather discuss this in private, but we do have additional excess monies that do get deposited in our cash management fund, which has millions of dollars in balance throughout the year.
Is it 20%?
We get 20% by the statutory deadline. We are in full compliance with the law. I discussed this today with council. She agrees that we are in full compliance with the law and board policy on the matter.
Thank you.
Any other business that any member wants to bring up? No? All right. Then I will now read the closed session resolution. I anticipate that this will be a very short closed session. And I will also, I'm sure to the joy of our public, let you know that in December you will have the opportunity for the second public session prior to our going into closed session, because just tonight we passed the revised policy on that. So that will go into effect in December. But unfortunately, tonight, you're going to have to wait a few minutes while we go into closed session before we get to the second public session. So be it resolved that the Board of Education of the Township of Monroe hereby moves to go into closed session in accordance with the Sunshine Law, Chapter 231 of the Public Laws of 1975, to discuss the following subject: harassment, intimidation, and bullying. Following closed session action may be taken. The discussion conducted in closed session can be disclosed to the public at such time as the need for confidentiality no longer exists. How long are we anticipating this will require?
5 minutes.
5 minutes? All right, we will promise to be back out here in 10 minutes. Okay, so moved. All in favor? Aye. Okay, then any opposed? All right. All right, we will now return to public session, and it's brought to my attention that there was one other piece of board business that one of our members wanted to bring up. So, Mr. Prezioso?
Yes. I would like to address a news article that recently came in the news about a board member admits to ethics violation. Okay, this ethics violation they're talking about is Kathy Kapanowitz versus Anthony Prezioso. I'll tell you what I admitted to. I sent out for an invitation-only email to 3 people up for I sent out an information email that 3 people up for election have special needs children in their lives. I wrote, and I quote, "Being a parent of one of God's special children myself, I have an interest in who will be my child's most," and I explained that the candidates had special needs children in their family. I needed support for our special needs kids. This was a way to inform grandparents and parents who, in my opinion, as a parent, would have our loved one's best interest. Out of the 200 special needs parents and grandparents I sent this email to, 1 special education teacher received the same email, and that was the violation. I admit to this charge. It was an email I sent out, but it was an email to help kids. The ethics charge cost the taxpayer, all of us, tens of thousands of dollars. Tens of thousands of dollars to have me to go to 1 sensitivity class. This money could have been better spent on our kids. It's a shame. Now, all of you might say, now Kathy Kapanowitz and a few board members might say, well, there's other ethics charges filed against me. Absolutely. They were all because I asked too many questions, because I did not get answers as a board member or a chairman of the finance committee. No matter how they twist and turn these charges to make me the bad guy, they are all for asking questions that in the past administration I was not getting answers to. All of those charges, the rest of them, were all withdrawn. Now, I have another one to address. Mr. Ira Tesla versus Anthony Prezioso. This also cost the taxpayers thousands of dollars. I made a statement to Mr. Tesla after a board meeting. The quote in the paper says, "You're Jewish. You should not raise your hand like that." Because of this statement, Mr. Tesla filed a police report against me, and he also filed ethics charges against me. This was thousands of dollars later. The court dismissed all the charges. Because of this action, I had to endure many people that didn't even know me accuse me of anti-Semitism. I kept quiet through all of this because no matter what I said, the people that wanted me off the board would have found a way to keep it going. Now I'll tell you why I made that statement. Before I was married, I lived in the same home for 16 years with a wonderful person. That person was a Holocaust survivor. We had a relationship like mother and son. When I made that statement, it was a concern for Mr. Tesla and the way a certain hand gesture might be taken. That's all it was. I have given my time and effort to all people, especially special needs kids. I spent my own money in court to fight for that summer program that we had for years. During the time of Hurricane Sandy, I was at the municipal building every day bringing bags of food to all the seniors that were left out of their homes. I offered my home to anyone at that time that didn't have shelter to stay. These were for all people. And over the years, my family has opened up their doors to special needs kids for parties at our own expense. And even this year, my family is giving their time and effort preparing shopping bags filled with holiday gifts for 100 kids. Now, to have anybody paint me as anti-Semitic or being prejudiced against anybody, this is the lowest form of an accusation. Shame on anybody who thinks that's the truth. That's it.
Okay, now we will go to our second public session. At this time, people coming to the microphone, please give your name, your address. If you have any affiliation, please state that. Please keep your comments to 3 minutes or less. Thank you.
Boy, that's tough, Doug. Joanne Cardone, 11 Gravel Hill, Spotswood Road, Monroe Township. Retired special ed teacher, but still I like to keep my hands in things, so I like to stay aware of what's going on. My questions relate to the portfolio assessment writers. I am aware of the new graduation requirements, but I'd like to know if the assessment writers are the ones who are going to be grading the portfolios or just writing what has to go into the portfolio.
Dr. Alvich?
We do not grade the portfolio assessments. They have to be sent to the state and be approved by the state. The state has given us guidelines to write the assessments and to write the problems that students would have to respond to.
Okay.
That's what the portfolio writers will be doing.
All right. Has all of this been outlined to the parents and the students?
Yes.
So the special ed students would most likely fall into that portfolio assessment.
Yes, possibly. Right now, they're in the process of all of the IEP meetings for any special education student or ELL, limited English language learners. They are in the process of meeting with those parents now, the child study team case managers. Some of those students may be exempt from testing. If they were exempt from the HESPA, they would be exempt from this graduation requirement, so they would not have to go through the portfolio assessment.
So they would be totally exempt
Correct.
from any of these graduation requirements?
Correct.
My other question applies to the AccuPlacer. I have some familiarity with it, and well, then I guess if our special ed students would be exempt, it wouldn't make any difference.
Correct.
But is the AccuPlacer going to be given during the school day?
No.
More instructional time lost?
No, this would be given after school. We would also offer review time after school prior to giving that assessment. And we're still in the planning processes of that. Nothing has been set in stone. I have a meeting Friday morning with Mr. Goodall and Dr. Critelli to come up with the action plan of how we're moving forward.
And when will the portfolio have to be completed by in order to be assessed by the state?
There are dates. I don't know the date off the top of my head, so I don't want to give a date and give you the wrong date. But the state has given us guidelines of exactly when we would have to submit it to the state. We can begin submitting portfolios for review to the state in January. I don't know what the final deadline is for that.
Okay. I was more concerned about the special ed students because I know the difficulty of those tests. All right, thank you.
Mark Klein, 7 Crenshaw Court. Mr. Precioso finally said what had to have been said. If you remember last time I asked about what the cost was to the district to go through this ethics baloney, and I call it baloney because that's what it was. I was able to file an Oprah request to get all of the attorney's fees, and I went through it, and anything that applied to Mr. Precioso, I added. Came out to $50,000 wasted. Any of the ethics charges could have been handled with a reprimand. Never had to go to court. The reason why I'm bringing this up now is this should be a lesson to the board that if you're going to go to the ethics board, it's going to cost. That $50,000 could have been used for many, many different things. So let that be a lesson to all of you and anybody else that's on the board thereafter, that it does have a cost and it's costly. The next thing is, that was brought up during the meeting, is we always give the teachers the opportunity for professional development. In many cases, it's very costly. And when I was on the board, I suggested that any teacher that will sign up for any of this development, that they sign a letter stating that they will stay for 3 years after they complete the course. Nothing was ever done. And what I think Mr. Rybeck had said, I think it was Mr. Rybeck, that you have teachers that take the development, we pay for it, and then all of a sudden the following year they leave our district to go elsewhere. So that's something you should address. You brought up about the legislature, more funding, which I fought for many, many years, and you all know that. In the newspaper before the election, there are at least 3 bills in the state assembly by the Republicans that would give us property tax relief and more money towards your districts. It's been there, as I understand it, well over 2 to 3 years. It's never called up for discussion. As far as the builders to pay towards the schools, it's illegal. I tried to do that when I spoke up at a planning board meeting, and I asked the builder, the applicant, if he would pay towards the schools, and Bob Smith, who is a senator, and he's a power broker in Middlesex County, says, we don't have to do that. The state says we don't have to do it. I'm on the zoning board. I brought it up on the zoning board to an applicant. The same thing. So that's got to be changed in Trenton. The last thing, I know my time is up, but the last thing is, Doug, you did a hell of a job. You're going to be missed. The vote was unfair. We didn't have enough people out voting because evidently they just don't give a damn. And in our development alone, we could have picked up easily 38 votes. This is proof again. We had it with Joe Homoki when he lost because he was number 5 and 3. I'm done. 5 and 3, and you were 7. Please run again next time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Klein. I do want to share one piece of information with you. In the latest teacher contract that we negotiated that is now in effect, we do have a clause in there that takes care of teachers that are going to graduate school and being reimbursed. They do have to remain in the system a certain number of years after taking that course. Otherwise, they have to reimburse the district for the cost of that, because we did feel that that was something that was not working to our advantage necessarily. So that has been corrected.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I clarify one thing that Mr. Poy?
No. No. Otherwise, it gets into a debate. Yes.
Hi, good evening. My name is Nisha Namara, and I live at 28 Carnation Drive. Tonight, I am here to advocate for a swim club at the high school, at Monroe Township High School. And usually, just as a side note, every night at 8:30, I'm actually putting my 6-year-old and my 5-year-old to sleep. This evening, my 6-year-old and my 5-year-old both asked me where I was going. Do you have another meeting to go to? You know, why are you always out in the evening? Blah, blah, blah. And I said, actually, I do. And tonight, I'm going to speak in front of the board to try to get us a swim club. And my son looked at me and he touched me on the shoulder and he said, good luck. So I have the full support of my children, which was most important before coming out here. But now I want to gain the support, hopefully, of the board, as well as the entire Monroe community. And the letter that I submitted, not only on my Facebook page, but to Dr. Alvich this evening, as well as the athletic director, Greg Beyer, is as follows. And I will just try to highlight some of the reasons that I think it is undoubtedly compelling that we have a swim team here in Monroe. Dear Board of Education, we are parents who are supportive of the athletic endeavors of our children, and we thank you in advance for your careful consideration. The argument on behalf of a Monroe High School swim team, as I mentioned, is very compelling. First of all, we have a tremendous interest in a swim team in this community. We have hundreds and hundreds of parents and their children who are taking their children to swim lessons, teaching them to swim competitively, and that's all happening, in Monroe families across the community. I put up a Facebook page entitled Swim Monroe, and within 1 week, over 300 people had visited this page, and I garnered 150 signatures of people who are just interested in allowing their children to compete in swimming at the high school level. So the public has definitely spoken, and the message is clear: we want a swim team. Second, almost every school in Middlesex County has a high school swim team. I was shocked when I moved to this area and I found out that we didn't have a swim team. It's basic, in a few words. Our efforts are long overdue. In order to remain respected, competitive, and engaged with schools in our county, we need to establish the same. Third, as most of you know, swimming is a lifelong sport. While the medical benefits are many, improving circulation, weight loss, more importantly, swimming breeds camaraderie. Students carry these relationships forward as adults, remembering, promoting, and reliving their times at Monroe High School decades after they graduate. And fourth, our children need to develop a sense of community. We need to pull our community together. One more second. Currently, those who swim competitively are doing so in Freehold, Petty, and even Hamilton. Our home is Monroe Township, and we need to stand proud wearing our colors and the school name when we compete. So members of the board, specifically the curriculum committee, who I understand is going to be discussing this at the December curriculum committee meeting, I ask that you look very closely and that you carefully consider a swim club for Monroe High School. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment, and let me just say that I personally believe that as high schools get larger, that you do need to expand your extracurricular offerings to provide for the various abilities, needs, and talents of the larger number of students that you have. However, I am mindful of the fact that we are only allowed to grow our budget by a certain % each year. And right now, we're faced with such a problem because of the number of students that are simply coming into the district. Just trying to house those students, provide for the educational needs of those students, really makes it quite difficult for us to add new programs. And I will also mention, because I have studied this even before I was on the board, I look at it every year, the per student cost compared to the other districts in Middlesex County. And for reasons which I still do not fully understand, Monroe spends more money on their extracurricular program per student than almost every other district in the county. And somehow we have to find a way, if we're going to put something like swimming in, we're going to have to find a way to fit that in and yet not exceed the budget cap. And I don't know exactly what that would mean, but I'm glad that it's going to be looked at by the curriculum committee, because they're the ones that should be studying it first. Yes?
My name is Laura McIntyre. I live at 112 Dye Grove Road. I am on the ad hoc committee and also on the Historic Preservation Commission. I am also OESA swim official, so I'm one of those people on the deck in the white shirt walking around. I have to say, swimming has been a part of my family my entire life. My daughters swim. And I understand the impact and the students we have coming in. I live on the Oak Tree side, and I see it weekly. It's not a sport that really costs a ton of money. A pool, yes, but to go someplace and swim, it's not a big cost. You need a swimsuit, some goggles, some fins, and the kids are done. I mean, I can sit here and talk about all sorts of great statistics on GPAs and kids going off to college and all that stuff, but really it does, we all know that. I mean, other sports can dazzle us with their statistics too. I just think that we really need to be able to compete in that area. We have so many kids coming in. The interest is huge. I just realized tonight alone, this small group, we represent 3 different swim teams in this area. And We should all be home. We should all be here. I know my daughter swims with some of the fastest swimmers in the nation. I mean, that's just in this area alone, in their age group. I mean, that says a lot, not just in the state, in the entire nation. So we have such swim talent in this area that I'd love to see that come to Monroe. And for years and years, people are constantly asking me, how come we don't have a swim team? How come we, I mean, I understand it's a process and it's going to take time, but I hope we can start seriously considering it and maybe moving towards that in the future.
Thank you, and as I listened to your comment, it reminded me of something that I think the public needs to be aware of. You're quite accurate that in order to have a swim team does not require that you have a swimming pool in your school district. Most high schools, they rent swim time at YMCA's, at other schools' pools. North Brunswick has a pool in their school, I know, and I know that West Windsor has pools in their school. I'm not sure about South Brunswick or East Brunswick, but there are places where you can find pool space that you can rent, somewhat like our ice hockey team does. Nevertheless, there's still the cost of the coaching and there's still the cost of the transportation that's involved in that, but certainly it is much less than what many of the other sports do require. Anyone else? No one else from the public wishes to speak? All right, then I will close the second public session. Once again, I just want to remind you about our Student Advisory Committee that will start up in January. Please keep that in mind. Encourage friends, neighbors, etc., to consider signing up for that. Our next meeting of the Board of Education will be Wednesday, December the 16th, here at the high school at 7 p.m. I move that we adjourn this meeting. So moved. Okay, all in favor? Is anyone opposed? Meeting is adjourned.